making all kinds of shenanigans right now. It's making a huge fuss with my streaming. But anyways, we always have those problems. I always have those problems. I hope you're having a fantastic day. This is the Apostate Prophet here with Abdullah Sameer finally. Please let me quickly know if
It's
everything
not live yet. It's not
sounds
live
okay.
yet. It's not live.
It should be live now. Yeah. I think we just went
Okay,
live
there we
like
go.
10
There we
seconds
go.
ago.
Okay.
Hi everybody and welcome. I was just talking about how the stream is kind of lagging a little bit, but everything should be fine. Let me know if everything sounds okay, if anything sounds bad.
Hello, hello.
Let me know. And I'm here with Abdullah Sameer. We're going to have a conversation together finally, talk about current issues, talk about him and me and all the stuff that we do. First off, Abdullah Sameer. Abdullah, welcome to my channel.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I'm at home with all the kids and doing well. Still have a job for now. Still have a life. Life is still going on. So I'm grateful for all that. Not so grateful about how people are ignoring the warnings to stay home and to stay away from the mosques, and people are still going and spreading the virus further and further, not just to themselves but to other people. Not so happy about that.
See, we just wanted to have a small conversation, a positive conversation, and then you immediately have to come with this anti-Muslim bigotry of yours. Abdullah Sameer, why do you hate Islam and Muslims so much?
I don't hate Islam. I mean, I do dislike Islam,
Okay.
but I don't hate Muslims for sure. Most of my family are Muslims, just like yours, and but yeah, definitely I don't like Islam.
I say the same thing when people tell me, "Why do you hate Islam so much?" or "Why do you hate Muslims so much?" I say, I don't hate Muslims. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why you came up with the idea or why you think. I actually do know why you think that, because that's basically what you learn.
Yeah.
When you grow up with Islam, you learn that everyone hates you and that that you are oppressed and they will all hate you and they will fight you and all that stuff. And I learned the same thing, and I went out into the world thinking that that everyone hates Muslims and that I cannot trust anybody about religion and all that stuff. But I don't hate Muslims. I do have a severe, probably dislike for Islam, and
Yeah.
which has many reasons, and I will gladly be here to talk about them all the time, but not Muslims.
Definitely, that's one of the tactics used to get people like us to be shut down. They try to tell us that, oh, you're a bigot, you hate Muslims. Well, no, we don't hate Muslims. Definitely don't hate Muslims, because like I used to be Muslim and I understand. Like I was in that world myself. So if I hate Muslims, then that means I hate my whole family. But that's just a tactic used to shut us down. It's like the whole Islamophobia title. The whole word is so ambiguous. It's like, well, is it about Islam? Is it about Muslims? The intent behind it is obviously anti-Muslim bigotry, but then they should just say that, right? Because Islamophobia, the title, makes it sound like there's something wrong with not liking Islam as a religion.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So we have the current thing going on, the current COVID issue going on, the mosque issue going on, but and we want to come to talk about that, but I want to briefly come to you, because many of my viewers might not exactly know what you do, what your background is, and all that stuff, and I would like to take the opportunity to just for you to introduce yourself, your backgrounds. You are an ex-Muslim like me, but of course we have very different backgrounds, so can you briefly tell me and tell us where you came from and what it is about?
So the interesting thing is, I was actually born in an Ismaili family. Ismailism is a small sect in the Muslim community, a very small sect from the Shias, so probably 1 or 2 million in the world, and or maybe up to 10 million, let's say. And a very liberal sect, a very easygoing sect, you could say. Like they don't pray 5 times a day. They pray in the morning and at night. It's not even based on the sunset and sunrise. It's just, the leader is a man who claims to be the 49th or 50th living imam, descended from Prophet Muhammad. So he's kind of like a pope figure that gets to actually make the rules. He's a descendant of Muhammad, they claim, right? And he makes the rules. So he always talks about it's good to volunteer, it's good to go to Khane, which is a mosque, but you should also get educated in the world. So that was kind of the religion I was born into, a very easygoing religion. But then when I was in my teenage years, around 18, I had some Sunni friends in my high school that told me that you should read the Quran. And I started to read the Quran, and I'm like, this religion that I'm following is very different than what the Quran is teaching. And as I looked more into it, I started to feel that Sunni Islam was better and it was more accurate. That's what I thought at the time. And I'm like, Ismailism is so watered down, and it's not even like hardly anything to do with what the Prophet taught anymore, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to become Sunni Muslim. And after that, I deep dived into Sunnism, into Islam, and I started to pray 5 times a day, and eventually I gave up Ismailism. For some time, I was kind of in the middle, and then I started going to the Islamic events, the conferences, and this was all in Canada, right? So in Canada, in a public school, I actually converted to Islam. We used to have Jummah prayers at the school. And I even gave a Jummah khutbah once. I think it was on materialism or something. I don't remember now. Really? And as things progressed, I started to get more and more into the religion. The funny thing is, did I ever consider that maybe the religion was wrong? Well, not really. I did look into it a little bit. And even back then, this was like, I don't know, like decades ago, right? Like 2 decades ago. There were websites against Islam, but they were mainly Christian websites. So Answering Islam had an article about, does the sun set in a murky pool? And I remember reading that article, and I was like, hey, this is a problem in the Quran. But then I think, what a lot of people don't understand is that religion is a very emotional thing. And, we do things mainly as human beings for emotional satisfaction first, and then rationality after. So I converted, and I was like, I'm going to be part of this community. I was like born again Sunni, and eventually what happened was I started to make everything in my life around Islam. So I would avoid banking jobs. I didn't get a mortgage. I had a big family. I got married to another Muslim convert. She became Muslim before she met me, and she converted to Islam, and we got married, and we were living this Islamic life together, right? And as things went on, it was just like I was just becoming more of someone that wanted to promote the religion. I was like, this religion is the best thing ever, and I have to like tell everybody. So I started a website called lightuponlight.com. The website's still up to this day. It's still up, and you can still see that this is what I did. I wasn't like what you would call a scholar. Some people try to say, oh, he was a scholar. I wasn't a scholar. I was just a guy that wanted to do the right thing and wanted to be on God's good side, because I was like, this is really, really mean, nasty God. I didn't say it in those words, but it was a scary God. Allah is scary, right? He terrifies his believers into submission, and either you do what he says or else. So that's what happened. I was like, okay, I have to do what he said. So I was fasting, I was praying, I was building this website to help more people come on Allah's good side, because you don't want to be on Allah's bad side, right? Yeah. And I thought it was true. So that's what I did. And so I built this website. It had millions of downloads. Then I started another big website, which was Verse by Verse Quran, which was a Quran website that was made to help people to memorize the Quran and stuff like that. So those were the 2 big projects I did. And then, of course, behind the scenes, I was helping Sheikh Yusuf Estes, and even some of your followers might know Eddie from the Dean Show. He is a very popular channel as well. I was helping him as well. So these guys all know me. And eventually, at one point, this was 5 years ago, I started to have some doubts. So things started to catch up. My scientific literacy, which was very, very low, I never studied science in my life, started to give me knowledge. The knowledge that I got from science helped me to start seeing that the Quran had problems. And this is how it all started. And then the next thing that happened was the story of Dhul Qarnayn. When I started to look into it, I was like, well, this is interesting, because this doesn't make any sense that there's this guy, Dhul Qarnayn, and he had this big built this big dam to keep out this Gog and Magog, and things started to fall in place that I started to realize that, hey, Islam cannot be false. It cannot be true. So when this happened, after all of this thing happened, now I was like, I have to do something. Like, here I was telling all these people Islam is true. My younger brother became more religious because of me. Like, all of these people were becoming better Muslims and becoming more religious. I remember so many people that I influenced. I'm like, I have to make up for that. I have to show people that this is actually. And I thought, hey, once I show people, they'll just accept it. But lo and behold, I was so wrong. It's so much more difficult than that to just like, convince people, because like I said, people are emotional. So that's my journey. That's how I got to where I am now.
So it is interesting. You never see. I was just recently looking into the whole Ismaili branch. I talked about that with Imam Tawhidi actually. We very briefly brought it up about how there was an Ismaili caliphate in the past, the Fatimid Caliphate. And that was the only kind of Shia government, the only actual big Shia state that existed, but they are currently not around. And Imam Tawhidi was kind of trying to brush Ismaili off as a thing, as just a wrong offshoot of Shia Islam, while they were quite dominant back in the day. And
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I didn't know they still have this whole thing going on. This still imams going on, and still
So the
46th imam or so.
Yeah, I think it's 49 or 50. The 12ers are actually known as the 12ers, the mainstream Shias. The reason they're called 12ers is because they say Imam Mahdi, the 12th Imam, is in hiding. Now, Ismailis decided to continue that past 12, and they kept going to this day, which is where, this guy claims to have his spiritual authority. But of course, one of the things I used to ask my dad was like, you believe this guy is, the light of God? And he's like, yeah. And like, so you believe he knows everything? Because Shias have this idea that all the 12 Imams have knowledge of everything.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, so he knows we're talking about him right now? He's like, yeah. I'm like, so if we call him on the phone, he's going to say, hello, Sameer? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. Now, I think he knew this wasn't actually true, but he was like, to me, faith is blind. I'm not going to analyze and be rational about my faith. This is my faith. And so he just believed it. Like, he didn't want to really, dissect it and challenge it. But I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Right?
Yeah. So do the Ismaili also believe that that there's this thing? So you just kind of talked about that, but the whole Mahdi issue. Mahdi is a very, very big thing in Shia Islam.
No, they don't have anything to do with. I think because the Imam is still living, they're not waiting for the 12th Imam. They're like on 49 or whatever, 50, right? So they don't really care about Mahdi. Like, I never once heard anything about Mahdi. I never once heard anything about heaven or hell. I even had to ask my Ismaili relatives, is there even heaven and hell in Ismailism? Like, I've never heard Aga Khan ever. He's called Aga Khan, which means the King of Kings. I've never heard him talking about heaven and hell. And they don't talk about that. So it's not important to them. Like, it's totally different. Like, the religion, it's not at all like Sunni Islam. It's so different, right?
It's more based on I guess more based on deeds and morality, and
it's more based on volunteering and being a good member of society, and you'll find Ismailis also tend to fit in a lot more. Like, they'll actually blend into the society a lot more. They're not like, you wouldn't find them with big beards and looking different. They kind of tend to fit in more, right? It's part of the culture of the religion. So the religion is more modern. It's more like influenced by Sufism and this sort of like spiritual way of looking at things, and it's like the esoteric meaning of the Quran, not the so when it says you have to wash before praying, they're like, oh, we're spiritually washed, we don't need to actually wash, and stuff like that. And the prophets, when they say don't get drunk, they mean don't get drunk on this life. Do not get drunk on the love of this life. It's all about like hidden meanings. But all Ismailis have to give Aga Khan 12.5% of the wealth, gross wealth.
Sure.
So if you're earning $100,000, you have to give them $12,500. Now there's no way to. It's all voluntary, so to speak. But my dad used to tell me that, if you don't do this, then something bad can happen to you. Like there's some superstition around it too in the community, and they feel like if you don't do this, then maybe you won't be blessed in your life, So they all give 12.5%, and the more committed members give 25% of their wealth to the imam. And this guy's a billionaire.
It's
Aga
funny.
Khan is a I shouldn't say billionaire, millionaire, multi-millionaire. He has property all over the world, and they do a lot of charitable work too. Like I was born in Aga Khan Hospital, so there's hospitals and schools and stuff they do as well. But to me, it's just like a big religious scam.
That is crazy. That is crazy. It is. Well, it sounds to me more like a thing, like a sect that focuses more on just on the what Muslims call the batini part
Yeah,
of Islam, which
exactly.
is the how do you describe it? The deeper,
In the yeah,
the spiritual, the deeper part of Islam, which is rather than the apparent, the
yes,
Zahiri part, the
exactly.
yeah, the
Yeah,
more about, which is more about laws and the life manifestation of Islam in
yep,
practice, which is it's like kind of the opposite of Salafi,
yes.
kind of. It reminds me of how Sufism is. Like I grew up in a Sufi environment, for example, which is for those who don't know, which is Islamic mysticism. It is still Sunni Islam. So we were still Sunni Muslims. We identified as Sunni Muslims, but we would also abide by tasawwuf, which is mysticism. So according to that mysticism, it is we still believe in the same thing that other Muslims believe in. We still believe in the same thing that, for example, most of these traditionalist, fundamentalist Muslims believe in, but it is just we give much more importance to matters that are about spirituality and the deeper meaning of faith and your relationship with God and stuff like that, rather than being so strict and executing Allah's will on the people of society and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
uh,
And you know what? I think it's actually better. This version of Islam is actually better because, like you said, it's more private. It's more about private practice
yeah,
than, like implementing the law on people,
yeah,
which is why Islamism is such a problem because it's all about forcing Islam, legislatively. Whereas, this is more like, they want to pray or whatever privately to God. It's less harmful, honestly, right?
it is, it is. But the thing is, it is also very diluted. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I think about well, when I think about I study religion quite a lot, and when I think about religion, I disagree with a lot of people with people's definition on what religion is good or what makes religion good and what makes religion bad. And my perspective and my definition of what makes religion bad is not necessarily that the religion is it's just that the religion is intolerant or aggressive or violent. I think further beyond that, I think there is something about religions that is quite a great candidate for me in making religion bad, which is when it becomes extremely diluted and kind of crazy to such a level that it makes people extremely superstitious and extremely apathetic about life and about solutions to life and about work and efficiency, in that it drags society back into the past, or that it makes them just completely inefficient. When I look at Sufi Islam, that's what I see.
Yeah,
I don't s-
absolutely.
I don't see that they are as violent and as aggressive and intolerant as the Salafi Muslims, but they are just very deluded and very apathetic to such an extent where I think this is not good for society. This is not good for humankind. You know?
I think that's an argument to be made for sure because people sometimes make the argument that religion has its benefits, like people are getting some sort of positive, like they feel better in times of suffering and stuff like that, and that would apply to Ismailism too, but specifically using Ismailism as an example, you have a lot of things that come along with it that just because you're Ismaili, you kind of have to do. So paying that 12.5%, believing that this guy can help you. So a lot of people actually go and pray to Aga Khan to, give them kids and stuff like that. And like I said, like my dad was saying, oh, this guy knows what we're saying. I'm like, but he got divorced. He didn't see that coming. Like, how is that, right? So that's the thing. Like, it's always going to be pros and cons. But I think overall, on the whole, it is a delusion, and I think we're better off without it. Yes, religion maybe helped us in some ways to get to where we are now as a society, as humanity, but I think we're better off on the whole without a lot of these things, which is why I like mindfulness. I think mindfulness, meditation is something that you can do without having any sort of bad beliefs. You don't have to believe anything. You can just practice being. It helps you be more calm. It helps you to be, have less anger. It helps you to be more tolerant, and it helps you to be a better person without having to get, like Muhammad said, whoever abstains from anger, I will give him his choice of the hurul ain on the day of judgment. Like, you get to pick whichever virgin woman you want. It's such a silly, like, childish way to treat humans. Like, you treat them like little kids that need little toys as gifts, right? Like, no, we don't need to be treated like children. We should do things for the sake of being a better person, not because someone's going to give us a toy. You know what I mean?
Well, it kind of worked well when you look at philosophy. This gets very deep right now, but whenever you look at it, it kind of worked well in Eastern cultures, in Far Eastern cultures, in East Asian cultures, where people like Confucius, for example, built their whole philosophy more on what's practical and what's good for society, rather than on what's on the virgins that they will get when they go to heaven, if they are just good people, if they just abide by Allah's rules, or if they just do what Muhammad says. So it could have been different. I'm personally not an anti-theist. I'm personally not strictly against religion. I think that when I look at it from a greater perspective, there is something that I appreciate about religion in our history, although it might have indeed contributed to bad things in our society, in our human civilization. I still think it kind of gave us something that humanity needed at some point. It was part of human development. It's just what I think. I would elaborate on that much further at some point, but I want to get back to you. It's funny. You said you stopped following the Ismaili
Ismailism?
branch.
Yep.
Yeah, Ismailism, whatever you want to call it. The Ismaili religion. That's what we would say it from our perspective back then, because you wouldn't consider that Islam. But which is funny, because I was recently talking to Imam Tawhidi too, and he was kind of, as said, he was kind of presenting that as if like his Shia Islam was like the right Shia Islam, and the other Shia Islams were wrong Shia Islam. They were, of course, just bad offshoots. But then, who decides what is right? What is the right Shia Islam and what is the wrong Shia Islam? And why are you complaining about Muslim infighting when you are doing the same thing? I don't understand.
Yeah, that's the thing with religious sects. Religious sects are the strongest way of seeing very clearly that the whole thing is made up, because there is no right and wrong at the end of the day. It's just your opinion versus someone else's. Like, was Islam supposed to be ruled by, like, was Ali supposed to be the caliph? Well, according to Muhammad, he never left any sort of guidance when he died. He didn't leave any guidance when he died, which was shocking for the leader of this final religion that was supposed to be not just a private religion, but also like have a like a government. Why wouldn't he tell anyone what was happening? Why wouldn't he? And now Shias will say there's a conspiracy by the Sunnis, like Abu Bakr and whatever, to not let him write it down. That's what they say, actually. They say that there's a hadith that says he wanted to write down something, and they were like, oh no, he's lost his mind.
Yeah.
But like, really? Like, you believe God allowed such a... Because when Muhammad died, there was this huge chaos in the community, right? There was infighting, there was apostasy, there was the Ridda which was like a lot of the Muslims decided, we're not going to pay zakat anymore, and if you want it, you're going to have to fight us. So all of these people left Islam when Muhammad died, right? And it became such a problem that his own wife Aisha started fighting with his son and Aisha, his wife, was fighting with Ali, right? Now imagine that. Ali, his son-in-law / his cousin, fighting with his wife. Yeah. And this was like a physical fight with swords. Like, they were trying to kill each other. So, I mean, that's kind of embarrassing for the last and final religion to leave such a mess like that, right? And then who's to say who's on the right side, who's on the wrong side? Some people will say, well, she shouldn't have done it, and probably she shouldn't have fought him. At the same time, there was some sort of chaos going on. All of this chaos happened because Muhammad didn't leave a clear plan behind, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, according to Muhammad, he was. It is just a giant mess. I mean, as you said, we could even go so far to say that when Muhammad died, people were more focused on how to continue his succession and the Islamic banner. They were more concerned with that than with actually taking care of the dead Muhammad.
Yeah.
And it was all about fighting about who leads the Muslims, who is the leader, who deserves it and who doesn't deserve it, and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
if you look at the hadith, the sources of what Muhammad actually is reported to have said, it was just very vague. I mean, he is supposed to have said, if I had left a successor, it would have been this guy, or if I had left a successor, it would have been this guy. So conflicting reports. And then in other reports, he says that soon after he dies, there will be like, things will go down very soon, and and the end times will come and all that stuff. So it is just a giant mess. Muhammad came along. He was severely deluded. He gave people an extremely deluded message that he succeeded to give them because he was a good manipulator. And then people just adopted his teachings after he died, didn't know what to do with it. And then we ended up having not only a division between the Sunni and the Shia and other divisions that both of them kind of hate, but also Sunni Muslims within themselves have so many different divisions. Shia Muslims among themselves have so many divisions because they didn't know what to do with these weird, absolutely crazy teachings that this guy has left and died.
Yeah. And who knows, like, even if a lot of those hadith that, like, for example, Sunnis claim, like, Muhammad did these things so that Abu Bakr would be in charge. I mean, God knows whether those are actually true, because obviously Bukhari came 200 years later. So the chances, I mean, actually, that's what Shias say. Shias will say Bukhari was, making up hadith to favor Omar, Uthman, and Abu Bakr over Ali. They actually say that, right? So
Yeah.
it's all has to do with what these scholars decided to preserve and to impart to the Muslims, because we don't really know what was said by Muhammad other than what they decided to preserve. And even then, like, there's definitely a political agenda, right? Like Bud Ehrman says, when he's reading the Bible, he looks if there's any statement that goes against what they wanted to prove, which was that Jesus was God, then it's fair game that it might be true, because there's no agenda there, right? So for example, if there's a story in the Bible, and this is a historical method he uses, he's saying historical method he uses that if the thing is trying to prove that Jesus is God, or is kind of giving him divinity, then there could be some question there, because we know that's what they were trying to prove. But it was just like a statement that doesn't actually strengthen that claim. Well, there's no reason for them to make that up. So there's a chance that it's likely true. And the same thing you can say with Islam, right? If there's something that's being used to prove Muhammad, like his miracles and stuff like that, yeah, obviously the Sunnis would want to preserve that. And if there's something that goes against Muhammad, actually, they did end up preserving a bunch of those too, but probably at the time they didn't think this is so bad, right? Like him marrying a 9-year-old, they didn't think that was a problem. Like, yeah, that's fine, that's okay. Him walking into Zainab's house and saying, "I'm your husband now. Allah made me a husband." Like, they were like, yeah, that's fine. So they just preserved that too. Now we're like, oh damn.
Awesome. Okay. I want to just go to a few super chats quickly before I move on. By the way, I want to say something here. Here is there is a dear Muslim viewer, a dear Muslim contributor who has just left a message. I just want to point out for everyone, since he doesn't want to hide it, that he's a Muslim commentator who said, "Hey, Apostate Prophet, how is the coronavirus troubling you in the States? Ha 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 ha." This comes from a dear Muslim viewer who wants to, of course, as always, make a very good image of Islam in the world. And he said, "Hey, how is the coronavirus treating you in America? Ha 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 ha." Anyway, so much to that. I just wanted to share that with everyone since he was shameless enough to share that here. You're doing great work for Islam, by the way, whoever you are. Jan Kaas made a super chat and said, "Congratulations with 200,000 subscribers, AP. Prepare for David Wood. You need it." For those who don't know, I will have a debate with David Wood very soon about morality, about whether morality comes from God or whether morality does not come from God. So whether we should abide by divine command morality or not, and whether we have a natural sense of morality that comes from God or not. And obviously, I will be arguing for that it doesn't come from God. So that will be happening soon. We haven't yet decided when to start publishing our work, but it will not be live. It will be here on our channel. So David Wood will make his opening statement. I will make mine, and then we will make responses and so on. So it will be kind of a huge debate thing for all who are interested in such a debate between an atheist like me and a Christian like David Wood who want to debate morality and God. Stay tuned for that. And some other super chats. Monica Furtado made a super sticker. Thank you so much, Monica, for that. Solitary Emmy made several super stickers, 4 of them. A fox or something with hearts, and then a unicorn and a burger and and popcorn. Thank you so much. I guess you're really enjoying that right now. And Paul Anderson made a super chat saying, "Love your work and keep going." Thank you so much, Paul Anderson. Thank you so much. I will keep reading those super chats as they come in. And if you want to attach questions to them, I will lovingly take questions and talk about them here with our dear friend Abdullah Sameer. Abdullah, we have a lot of, whenever it comes to you and me, like when we talk or when people compare you and me, there is always this thing happening. Like, there are many people who kind of disagree with my approach because I'm kind of more ruthless, I would say.
Antagonistic?
Yeah, antagonistic, whatever. And I'm kind of more assertive. But then others disagree with yours because they think you're too peaceful. But then we have others who agree with mine because they think, oh yeah, I'm very harsh, and that's good. And then there are others who agree with you because they think, oh, you are very reasonable, and that is actually much better. And then there are those who appreciate both of us, and then there are those who hate both of us. So I just think it is great that we both do this, that we both exist. It's
absolutely.
If our approaches are different, I totally appreciate the fact that you are here and that you are doing that and I'm doing that and that we are different.
Definitely. We definitely need different approaches to, I actually used to think that, obviously I think my approach is better, but what I've seen is that there's a lot of people who actually mention you, a lot of Muslims. I used to think, oh, Muslims would never listen to this guy. He's he's calling the prophet this and that. But the fact is, you actually do have an outreach, and you are reaching Muslims, and that's amazing. Because my initial thought was that, oh, your audience is mainly non-Muslims. But when I get messages, we get a lot. I don't know if you get, but I get a bunch of private messages saying, "Thank you guys so much," and and they mention you by name. They're like, Ridwan helped me, and you helped me. Hassan Radwan helped me. And I'm sure you get tons of those as well. So definitely it's working. I think the way you put it out there, when you show how ridiculous and absurd Islam is, it shakes people's faith, because they're like, well, this guy is showing how is making it look so dumb. So either one of two things happens. One, they're gonna have to go into defense mode. And I think because of that, you get a lot more hate mail than me, and you get a lot more abuse than me, and you get a lot more insults and attacks. And 2 is they will actually think about what you're saying, and sometimes they'll even apologize. So that used to happen to me a bit, and nowadays I don't get a lot of that, but definitely this sort of shock and awe approach has its benefits too, right? Because people will see that, well, this is ridiculous. So either this guy's completely wrong, or maybe he's right, and it brings people to the audience, right? Because it has a bigger reach, you know what I'm saying, in some ways.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate your perspective. I personally, of course, think that my approach is the better one, and I don't need to defend that. It is obviously objectively true. Just kidding. No, I of course I receive a lot of messages from people who I mean, I have received so many messages. I saved them. I don't want to publish them, but of people who were like, hey, I started listening to you and it made so much sense, and I've left Islam, and it motivates me each time to get those messages. And the thing is, I think when I'm offensive, when I make fun of things, and when I'm kind of when I kind of appear a little bit very sarcastic and offensive, I just first off, I get a kick out of it. I like it. I'm sorry. I just have to say that I like it. I'm very proud of it. But on the other hand, I think it is just a good approach to make Muslims listen, because when they are offended, and when they feel offended, when they feel like, what the hell, he can't say that, then they start to listen, and they start to hear what I'm saying, and it spreads among them, because they share my stuff and how shameful and how disgusting it is, and then they just spread the virus, and which is
so you're calling yourself a virus now?
Yeah, it's probably a bad analogy, right? Especially right now at these times. But that's kind of how it happens, and I appreciate that. And the thing is, I get from those same people, I get those responses too, who say, hey, you and Abdullah Sameer have helped me. You and Abdullah Sameer have helped me out of this. Hey, I listened to Abdullah Sameer, and then I listened to you. Hey, I listened to you, and then I listened to Abdullah Sameer. And I see this thing, like. We both have these different approaches, very different approaches, but we both have like so many people who listen to both of us and to appreciate that, and to appreciate the perspective, and come and get out of Islam. And I just love that. I love that that is happening. Sometimes I think, like, how dare you compare me to Abdullah Sameer? No, seriously, I definitely think your approach is good. My approach is good. We both do it differently for people who just demand, or who just appreciate different perspectives and different approaches, and that is good. So I really want to counter and get rid of this whole thing of this whole, hey, Abdullah Sameer is better than you, hey, Apostate Prophet is better than you. I really don't care about that.
Yeah.
I think I love that you do this, that you exist, that you have your approach, that you do it so rationally, and I would always love to come together and work together and talk together again. So
absolutely, thank you. Yeah, I definitely feel like, though, like, being nice does, I mean, the Socratic method, or like trying to talk to someone without offending them, is the best way to reach them, because what happens is, if you offend them, they tend to build barriers, right? And I always go back to there's an interesting story I heard as a Muslim, where Bilal Phillips, I used to be a fan of Bilal Phillips, right? The Canadian convert Imam, Salafi, and he said that he invited Ahmed Deedat to his house to talk to his dad. His dad was thinking about becoming Muslim. He was Christian, right? Mm-hmm. And he said after Ahmed Deedat left, his dad became a stronger Christian. Ahmed Deedat is like Zakir Naik, like very like, yeah, your Bible says this, and your Bible says this, and the Bible allows this and this, and he said it caused so much, like it actually undid a lot of the work that he was trying to do. So I think in some cases what happens is people will build these walls, and then they'll go into attack mode, and they'll stop listening, because all of us, like I said, we're emotional beings first before we're rational beings. And when we think our tribe is being attacked, we will instantly go into defensive mode and attack mode, and it's tribalism, right? Because we're Muslims, and we have to defend Islam and our Prophet, and we love him more than anybody else, because that's what they've been taught. They've been taught that you have to defend Muhammad. He's more beloved than anyone else. And, and the stories of how the companions would take an arrow for him, and they would collect his sweat, and, Zubair would all of these things they would do for the Prophet. So they've been told the Prophet is more, and his wives are mothers, and this and that. So it's very tribalistic, right? And it's like people are not willing to listen when you attack them. But the thing is, I can't help it either. Like you said, you get a kick out of it. Sometimes I just can't help take the piss. It's just like, I posted something silly. Like someone shared this thing that said, if the mosques and temples and churches are not helping in spreading the virus, why do we even have them? Like, they're not helping. Why do we have them? Which is silly, because obviously it includes bars and restaurants and all that stuff too. But sometimes it's good to just like have a laugh, and you know what? It's okay if someone laughs at me too. someone wants to make fun of me and say, "Oh, haha, dumb atheist," I'm like, you know what? That's okay. I'm okay with that. That's how the world is.
Of
That's
course.
what we need. We need more people to laugh at each other, to be tolerant. I'm okay if people make fun of me, and just like I make fun of Islam. I mean, like, get over it. Like, really, it's a belief system. It doesn't have rights, right? Just like communism doesn't have rights. Just like atheism, any other system doesn't have rights. If you want to make fun of it, go ahead and make fun of it. You want to attack it, go ahead, but don't attack people. Don't attack people. Don't attack individuals. They have rights. People have rights. To for the own beliefs. People have right for their own sexuality. People have a right to be themselves, right? And they have a right for respect and dignity. But religions, I don't think, have a right.
No, they don't. They don't. Yep. Anyway, if you praise your own approach over mine one more time, I will have to mute you and go on without you in this conversation. No. Seriously, I mean, it's kind of also a thing. I think. I grew up. I lived in Turkey and have conversed with people over there and with Muslims in the Muslim world very much. And I kind of feel this thing. I sometimes get messages from people who are in Arabic speaking countries, who are in the Arab world and who are ex-Muslims there. And they text me and say and ask me why I have such a soft approach. What the hell, man? Like,
I
there are those people, people who live in that world and who think that I'm not doing enough and that I should be more, that I should talk about. I don't even want to say these things, but
I think people in the Arabic world have, and Pakistan, the ex-Muslims, they definitely appreciate what we're doing more, even more than the apostates in Canada and America and
yeah,
New Zealand, Australia, because they're silenced, right? They can't talk
yeah,
about these things, and they want to say what you're saying. They want to say that. They want to say, well, Muhammad was an immoral, unjust, oppressive, like, evil man. In many ways, he was no better than Genghis
yeah,
Khan or any other dictator of that era, right? And to put him up as some sort of pinnacle of perfection is ridiculous, right? So
mm-hmm.
I think the fact that you're doing these things actually gives emotional relief, like you said, to the people in those countries, especially in those countries, because you find also people, when they leave Islam, they tend to be very, very, they feel angry about, like, losing their life, losing the so many years of their life. Some of them, they lose their family members, they lose their wife, they lose their kids. I know a guy that studied at Medina, that when he left Islam, and he couldn't see his kids anymore. His wife took his kids away, and in Pakistan, I know a guy that left Islam, and his wife used his own family against him by secretly recording that he wasn't Muslim
Mm-hmm.
on a phone call. And his whole family said, okay, you don't get to see your own kids, including his own parents in Pakistan. So this is like, I mean, Abdullah Gondal, his some of his aunties and uncles, like, threatened to, like, kick his teeth in, and like, it's like, it's the amount of abuse some ex-Muslims go through, some apostates, especially in the Muslim world. It's just absurd. So I think they do appreciate, because
Yeah.
they want to say these things too, but they cannot.
I think the worst thing that I got, which was kind of unexpected, but also that I kind of did expect when I was still in Turkey, and I kind of I wasn't voicing my opinion about Islam at all. I wasn't saying really anything. I wasn't hiding it either. When people would ask me outside, I would just say, "Hey, I don't believe in Islam. I don't believe in Allah." And then if they would ask me why, I would kind of say it. But I think a few times I went online and said a few things like that about the government or the religion, and I think the worst reaction that I got when I was in Turkey, which is a very secular country, or much more secular than other Muslim countries, was that someone told me he would like to behead me and throw my head onto to
Damn.
the square, the main square of Istanbul. And
Jeez.
I thought, yeah, I'm sure you're going to do that. But the thing is, people live in environments where they can hear that from their neighbors, from their parents, from their siblings and cousins and relatives and friends and all that stuff. So those people live in those cultures. They have no way to express themselves. They have no way to express their distaste for the religion that they had to grow up with, that forced them to live a certain life, that forces them to still live a certain life in a wrong way without, without believing in it, that forces them to fake being Muslim, to fake being a religious Muslim, even in many cases. There are so many among them who have to go to the mosque in the morning and pray and fast through Ramadan and do all these things, and they don't believe and they just don't want to do it, but they cannot express it. They want to do it because they are afraid. And those people cannot express their opinions, which is why we should completely be able to say whatever we want here when we have the ability, and speak for those people who don't have a voice, speak for those people who need people like us to express what they feel. It is just, I feel like we have a responsibility almost. We have it's kind of a responsibility, and something that I think
I think it is a responsibility.
Yeah.
Definitely is a responsibility, because if you have the freedom, the thing is, it's different for everybody, right? Like a lot of people, even here in the West, I have a friend, for example, that he's atheist now since he left Islam in 2015, but he never told his family, he never came out publicly, because he wants to be able to talk to them without them saying, oh, you're just an atheist, I'm not going to listen to you. So he's trying to be a good example for, like, rationality in the family without, openly saying I'm not. And the thing is, a lot of people are scared of upsetting the parents.
Yeah.
I find my ex-Muslim friends, especially the ones in the 40s, they have parents that are like in the 70s and 80s, and they're like, well, these guys, how much longer are they going to live? Not that long. And they don't want to upset them. Me, I could never do that. Like I can never pretend to be something I'm not. And I'm just like, I have to tell everybody the truth about who I am. And if you don't like me, then you don't like me. If you don't want to see me, you don't want to see me. But I have to do that. But some people, everyone has a different situation, right? So those of us who can speak about it, I think it's really a good cause.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had this thing. My parents are very religious. I grew up with in a very religious family, but they wouldn't come out and threaten me or kill me or whatever, stuff like that. And I broke off when I was at a proper age and just moved out and started living my own life. But still, I didn't want to tell them that I don't believe anymore, although I always hated to be forced to do certain things. I just went away so I don't have to act like I believe in it anymore. But I also didn't want to just speak to them and tell them, because I didn't want to upset my mother, for example. So even after I started this whole YouTube thing, and even after I surpassed 100,000 subscribers, my parents still didn't know that I don't believe in Islam anymore.
Yeah, I saw your video. You made a video on that, right?
Yeah,
that was touching.
Yeah, and I went there finally to speak to them, and the funny thing is that someone apparently just the day before I arrived and before I was about to talk to them, someone apparently told them that I don't believe in Islam anymore, which is so dumb. But anyway, it happened, and people really just don't want to do that. Because it is so deeply indoctrinated, so deeply rooted in your mind, in your past, in your upbringing, that you have to be a Muslim. It is your identity. It is your meaning of life. It is everything you have. It's not just a religion. It's not just like a relationship with God, and you have to to listen to God and obey God and stuff like that. It is much more beyond that. In Islam, it is your identity. It is what makes you. It is your political identity. It is your ID. It is completely different. Breaking off from it and not believing in it anymore doesn't mean that you have just given up on God. It means that you have given up on your identity, on your purpose, on your parents, on your family, on your relatives, on your nation, on your country, on your people, on the entire Muslim community. That's what it means, and it is just very hard for people to make that step, to make that decision. So.
Definitely. Do you want to address the super chat from Soj Kovek?
I will. I just want to say hi to Vidovitz. Vidovitz was here in the chat. Thank you so much, Vidu, for being here. I should have a talk with you sometime too. But super chats. I want to go into the super chats again. Anthony Steadden made a super chat and said, "Eat Alan's snack bar." Okay, thank you, Anthony. Reason on Faith made a super chat. Reason on Faith has a very interesting. Do you still have a channel? Do you still go on with the channel? I don't know.
Yeah, he still has a channel. He hasn't made any videos lately.
Yeah.
personal
Yeah,
things in
yeah.
his life going on. But yeah, he's definitely still there, and he's hoping to do some new videos as well coming up soon. So
Awesome, awesome. He has a very fresh, very good perspective. Also very reasonable.
very reasonable.
Yeah, yeah.
No pun intended.
From from a from an ex-Ahmadi perspective, but he has a very good outlook on Islam. So I would definitely suggest following him. Reason on Faith made a super chat and said, "Greetings to you both. Congrats on the 200,000 subscriber milestone, AP." Oh yeah, by the way, thank you everyone for 200,000 subscribers. I haven't really said much about it, but I will say something about it. Thank you so much, and thank you, Reason on Faith. I appreciate it very, very much. Solitary Emmy made a super sticker. With a laughing, it's just going on with the super stickers. Thank you. And Sojkovic made a super chat and said, "It seems that Muhammad is more important than Allah himself in Islam. Some thoughts about this? Hello anyway." I would definitely say he's more important than Allah in practice among people, especially when you offend Muhammad. But go ahead, Abdullah Sameer. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, interesting thing is, Muslims don't really think about this.
Yeah.
But like they've made an idol out of Muhammad. I mean, you'll hear this from the Quranists specifically. Sometimes they'll say this, but like you've made an idol out of Muhammad. Like the funny thing is, what Muhammad said was, anyone that obeys. There was a Christian guy, Hatim. I think his name was Hatim. Came to him, and he was wearing a cross, right? And Muhammad's like, "You guys worship your rabbis and your lords besides Allah." And Hatim was like, "What? We don't worship rabbis and monks or whatever." Like, he's like, yeah, but if they tell you something is haram, you follow them, and if they tell you something is halal, then you also follow them, and that is worship. Well, what's Muhammad doing?
Yeah.
He's like making up things as he goes. Like, there's one example where he said, if I was going to ban all Muslims from sleeping with their wives, from having sex with their wives for the period of breastfeeding, like 2 years period that you're supposed to breastfeed, until I saw the Romans were doing it and the babies were fine, so it's okay now. So like, he's making things up as he goes along, right? Like there's the example of where he came and they were doing in Medina some pollinating of crops. And what they were doing was, they were farmers. They knew what they had to do was take the pollen from one of the date plants and put in the other one, and that's how it grows, right? Muhammad was like, da, 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 don't do that. If you don't do that, it would be better. Like who asked you anyways, right? But he said that, and then they came back to him and they're like, the plants didn't grow. And he's like, that's when he said, well, if I tell you something about religious matters, then listen to me, and if I tell you about worldly matters, I'm just a man. Yeah. Like, what? Like, really? Which damn, like you just debunked yourself completely. Yeah, like it's so funny, but like, yeah, like Muhammad is an idol. Like Muslims in every way are worshipping Muhammad according to his definition of worship. Adoring him, obeying him, like. Even the companions themselves, they were like collecting his sweat. Like his aunt would collect his sweat in bottles. When he did the wudu in the water, they would try to grab the water and drink it. There's even a narration that Zubair, one of the big companions, drank his blood. Like, this is like, if this is not idolatry, every time you mention his name, you have to say peace and blessings be upon him. In every single prayer, you're mentioning his name. Like every time, like this, and you're supposed to love him more than anybody else. Like, what is this? This is not idolatry. This is not worship. What is this then? If he, I believe, if Muhammad would have said, "I'm God," it wouldn't have made any difference. Yeah. Like, it would have been the same. It could have been the same religion, and he would have said, "I'm God," and still would have been the same religion. Mm-hmm. Like, tactically speaking,
I made a thing about this, actually. I made a video about this a while ago, like half a year ago or so, which I called the cult of Muhammad. And this was basically about the topic where I was trying to point out how Muslims claim that they are just following him as a prophet of Allah, but practically they are basically worshiping him. Practically, it is basically worship. It is basically idolatry. It is basically putting him on a place of worship with Allah. I mean, it is. There are so many things that you could say. There are their overprotection of Muhammad, their sensitivity towards saying anything about Muhammad, their sensitivity when it comes to disagreeing with Muhammad, for example. And many people might not know this, but in Sunni jurisprudence, it has been a long tradition there is a thing, I forgot what it's called. You might remember that, but things that make you a kafir, or words of kufr.
To do
And
takfir?
yeah, and it was long considered
Oh,
it
yeah.
was long considered kufr, to so blasphemy, to disagree, to explicitly disagree with something that Muhammad said. So which means if Muhammad said this is good, and you say, oh well, I disagree with it, I think this is bad, then you have blasphemed, and that
Yeah.
is an act of blasphemy,
Yeah.
which means you could be called a disbeliever.
Yeah.
So that is a criteria that Muslims actually believed in for a very, very long time. That was actually a part of Islamic teachings, a part of Islamic scholarly teaching. So according to that is pure idolatry. That is pure a worship of Muhammad. There is simply no other explanation for that. That is ridiculous. You cannot become a non-Muslim, a disbeliever, simply because you disagreed with something that Muhammad said, because
Yeah.
his words are so authoritative. But you don't
Yep.
even have to go that far. I think it starts at a very fundamental place with Islam, which is if you want to be a Muslim, according to Abrahamic religion, your purpose in Abrahamic religion is to believe in God, and to follow God, to believe in one God, and to follow His commandments, to follow His whatever His covenants. In Islam, it should normally be the same. In Islam, it should normally be the same that the requirement of being a Muslim is that you believe in Allah, or that you believe in God, and you believe in the one God, and you follow the one God. But Islam has a second requirement for you to be a Muslim. The second requirement is not only to say, I believe in Allah, but also to say, and that Muhammad is his messenger. You have to acknowledge, in order to be a Muslim and to avoid hellfire forever, that Muhammad is his messenger. You not only have to believe in Allah, in the one God, which is the primary purpose of Abrahamic religion, but also that Muhammad is his messenger. Some people may compare this to Christianity and may say, well, what about Christianity? But the thing is, in Christianity, Jesus, whom Christians worship, is supposed to be worshipped because he is God. He's supposed to be worshipped because he is believed to be the Son of God and God.
Yeah.
You might say that from a monotheistic perspective, that is blasphemy. Okay, fine. You might say that. But the thing is, Christianity is consistent within itself, in that it says Jesus is God, which means that we worship him as God. But in Islam, Muhammad is a mere human, a mere prophet, a mere messenger, like messengers before him, as the Quran says. But
Yeah.
you virtually worship that guy. You
Yeah.
virtually make a cult around that guy, which is very shady.
And in Islam, there's there's a hadith that says there's going to be 73 sects, and all of them are going to hell except for one, right? And different Muslims will add more conditions based on that. For example, Sunni Muslims will say Ahmadis are not Muslim, even though they pray, they fast, they do the 5 prayers. Like, I used to be in university, I used to have an Ahmadi guy. He was one of my friends, but he never told me he was Ahmadi. And then he used to lead the prayers sometimes, and I used to lead the prayer. And then one day I found out he was Ahmadi. I'm like, oh my God, all those prayers I did behind him, are they now invalid? He's a fake Muslim. He's Ahmadi. Because you can't tell. They're like 100% Muslim, except for they don't exactly believe that Muhammad.
Hello? Abdullah, you just froze. I don't think you can hear me. Reconnecting.
In a second. Can you hear me still?
Oh, now I can hear you. Now you are back. I don't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, so for every sect, they add additional rules and regulations about, what is considered to be a Muslim. And the funny thing is, by the way, I was going to say in the Islam that you were brought up in, the Sufi Islam, they are willing to use weak hadith. So you find
Yes.
even more questionable things like serious, like if you want to say worship, like as a Salafi, I was like, astaghfirullah, I don't worship Muhammad, it's bid'ah, haram, kufr, whatever. But Sufis are like, Muhammad is the light of the universe. The whole universe was made for Muhammad, and if it wasn't for like, you know more about this than I do because you probably heard this shit. Like,
There's a hadith. There is a hadith that Sufis often mention that they completely see as authentic and mention it, and that they love to bring up all the time. I learned that too when I was when I followed Sufi Islam, which goes, which according to that hadith, Allah spoke to Muhammad and said to him, "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have created the worlds." That is what Allah says to Muhammad. If it were not for you, Muhammad, I wouldn't have created the worlds. That is what Sufis actually, or what I wouldn't say all Sufis, but what many or maybe most Sufis believe in, that Allah created everything, all of us, the entire universe, just because of Muhammad. Those people
it's crazy, right? It's
crazy.
So insane to believe that. Even as a Muslim, I was like, I heard someone say that once, Imam, and I was shocked. I'm like, oh, like that's odd.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of add to the point you made, which I thought was a really good point, which is that when you find with Christianity, the theology is more consistent, and especially when it comes to Jesus, I think the biggest example of inconsistent theology is Jesus in Islam, because Jesus, one, he has no father. Like, all of a sudden, Allah decides, just for random reason, this guy has no father. And then he's also the Messiah, and he's also like, Jesus is al-Masih in Islam, right? And he's also like all of these attributes. He's a word of Allah. He's a spirit of Allah. Like, he has all these attributes assigned to him that don't make any sense if he's just a normal man in Islam. And it's like, well, why was he born without a father? In Christianity, well, because God is his father. In Islam, it's like, just because, like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was a very dumb mistake. I wanted to make a video about this long ago. It was Islam should never have adopted Jesus. It makes no sense at all. Islam should have never included Jesus as a prophet of God, as an important figure, because it as you say, it makes absolutely no sense at all with the whole doctrine and the whole theology of Islam. It makes no sense. It basically just comes down to Jesus came for no reason at all, and he failed. He did nothing at all.
Yeah. and on top of it, but the thing is, I was going to say that even though that's the case, you find, like, Pew polls show that most people, the biggest group that converts to Islam is Christians. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of Christians, maybe they're not really educated about, this whole, like, they don't notice maybe that, like, how wrong it is and how it doesn't make any sense in Islam, but they just swallow it for whatever reason. And for whatever reason, the biggest convert group to Islam is Christians.
Yeah. Well, I actually met 3 people who converted from Christianity to Islam, and neither of them had the basic knowledge of Christianity, I have to say.
Yeah. I know tons of people like that. I know tons and tons of Christian converts to Islam in real life and online, obviously.
They convert to Islam. They say, hey, I was a Christian, I converted to Islam. And then they start parroting all the, like, most basic
the talking points, right?
That Muslims make about Christianity.
Yeah.
That's not true. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, even as an atheist, it honestly drives me crazy when I hear the Muslim talking points about Jesus.
Yeah. It
just pisses me off because they're so wrong. They're so wrong. Like, the thing, I'll give you an example. I hear Muslims saying, nowhere in the Bible does it say Jesus is God. And when I say this, I'm like, oh my freaking God. Did you even read the Bible? Have you read John? Have you read any of the Bible? Like, it's so strongly, like, in the New Testament, that was the whole point of Christianity.
It's so obvious.
For you to say that it's not in the Bible, it's like some Christians that try to say that, Jesus has a higher rank than Muhammad in the Quran, which I think is just as absurd. It's kind of like strawmanning the book to make a point that's not really true, because any Muslim would know that Muhammad is above all the prophets. But some Christians will try to kind of convince Muslims in the same way. But when Muslims do it, it just drives me crazy. And I'm like, do you guys even study Christianity at all? Do you see there's such simple mistakes in Islam that someone should have known better if he was actually God? For example, the whole thing about Jesus having a gospel. Whereas the Injil is there's 4 Injils. There's the four Gospels. It's not just one gospel that Jesus, and it wasn't revealed to Jesus. it was written after his death. So like that's like a freaking big huge error right there in Islam, right?
And they say
Muslims,
they say he was given an original book, but the books that they now have
yeah,
are different. That's not what's meant. But then in the Quran obviously
yeah,
speaks of the Injil that they have in their
yeah.
possession. What is that? It makes no sense.
It's so ridiculous, and I mean, there's other mistakes like that in the Quran too. Like for example, the one that says the Jews say that Ezra,
Yeah,
Uzair, is the son of Allah.
I love
He's
that.
the son of Allah. No Jew ever said that. Like, what? You gotta wonder. Were they trolling him when they said that to see if he would
Probably.
put it in the book,
It's
or was it just some?
actually.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
maybe it was just some like heterodox sect that was, like in obscurity in the 7th century that actually said this, and they just died out and we don't even know about them now, which is hilarious. It ended up in the Quran. Like we wouldn't have even known.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
don't even know for sure if that's what happened, or if someone just lied to him and said, "Yeah, we worship Uzair." It's like, checkmate, Jews. You guys are idolaters. You worship Uzair. It's like, no, we don't.
I think there's a lot of that stuff actually. I mean, we have when you look at the Hadith, we have a lot of reports in which Jews come or supposedly come and ask Muhammad questions to test him,
Yeah,
And then Muhammad proudly responds to them, and then they go away, and he's very proud. And in some Hadith, he's deeply offended by their questioning and by their
yeah.
questions, and it just sounds to me very much like the Jews were just having a having fun with him. They were just trolling him and just coming and asking him stupid questions, and he would then just make up responses, and they would go back and would be like, "Oh yeah, you are right," and then they would go back and just laugh among each other
The
and
best,
make fun of him.
I think the best example of this is Dol Karnain. Like, I think
Yes.
that is the best because they were like, okay, here's the thing. This was a common story. Everybody is supposed to know this story of Dol Karnain.
Yeah.
He's a famous guy, like Alexander the Great, right?
Uh-huh.
But Muhammad didn't know it for some reason, right? So they asked him, tell us about Dol Karnain. He's like, I gotta figure this out. Give me some time. And then, like 15 days later, it's like, here's the story that you were asking about. And it's like, actually, the guy's not even a Muslim. He's not even a Christian. He's not even a Jew. He's a pagan,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
that's the story he decided to include in the final revelation.
yeah,
And now, of course, at the time, evidence seems to show that the Jews and the Christians believed he was a monotheist because they didn't have the historical data. It was just like a myth, right? So it's not surprising that Muhammad included this not historical, this basically this myth in the Quran, right? That's
yeah.
exactly what we would expect, right? I think that's the biggest example of. And I think it was the Jews that were asking these questions again. I don't know if it was the Jews or not, but whether it was not the people living in, because the Jews were known as the
No,
people.
it was Christians, I think.
Okay, it was a people. These were people of civilization. They had walls. They had, books. They were known to be people that read. Whereas the Arabs, the Arabs of Muhammad's time, they were known to be illiterate. They didn't have a real civilization or anything, right? And so the Jews used to poke fun at them, and they used to say, "Well, you guys don't know anything. Like, what do you guys know? Like, we have cities and we have all this stuff, and you guys don't have anything." So, I think that there was a little bit of inferiority complex going on there
Yeah.
between the people, the Arabs and the Jews at the time, the Arab Jews. And, eventually I think Muhammad got angry that they didn't accept him. So he had to take matters to, the next level. But yeah,
I think one example is also the whole thing, this story with the seven sleepers, which is something that I learned so romantically when I was growing up as a Muslim. That there were these seven guys who slept in a cave for 300 years, and then they woke up because they were persecuted in their city, and then they woke up 300 years later. I went outside. They thought only a few hours had passed, and then they found that the entire city has changed, and they have all become monotheists who worship God. And when you look at the story, it is just some Christians or some people come and ask Muhammad about these seven sleepers, or about the people of the cave, and then Muhammad doesn't really know how to respond. So he just he hears what they say, he hears the rumors, and then he gives people a response about how there were seven people, or three or five or seven, who spent time in a cave, and then they woke up, they were persecuted, and then it's even included in the Quran that way. But the Quranic account of the whole story is wrong. It's not in alignment with what people actually know, with what people clearly know, like about how many they were and what their names were. Like the Quran gets it all wrong. It's because again someone came and asked Muhammad about something, or Muhammad heard it somewhere and then he just started making up his own story.
And you
And
know, it's funny that the Quran talks about how they were arguing about the number of the people in the
yeah,
cave, and I was taught as a Muslim that this is one of the amazing things about the Quran is that it ignores insignificant details. But the funny thing is, it gets a lot of details wrong, like specific details
hmm
wrong.
hmm
So it's actually a mistake that Muhammad made. It's not that it's divine wisdom, because like there's so many examples of things that the Quran mentions that it could have just been silent upon. Like it didn't need to say that. And when it does that, it actually proves itself wrong,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like for example, saying that the seven heavens, saying that the heavens and earth was split, and the heavens was raised, and that the sky, is held up by pillars that you can't see. There's so many things that, like, some of these apologists will bring up and say, oh, this is just poetic, this is just a figure of speech, this and that. But like it's clearly 7th century vernacular
yeah.
in a way that they would have believed it, including Muhammad, right? So
hmm
to me, that was one more thing that made the whole house of cards fall down. Was it's just that if Muhammad would have thought this, and everybody else would have thought this, and this is what's in the Quran, what reason do we have to believe this is actually from some divine being?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so we wanted to talk a little bit also about the whole coronavirus issue and what's going on with mosques and Muslims and all this stuff. I kind of wanted to not
Yes.
go very long, over an hour. I wanted to quit soon, but maybe we can have a few more minutes or 10 minutes to talk about that stuff. I think you are more you have been more following that issue. Since the coronavirus is going around, people are advised to not go into large crowds and to stay at home, to spend more time in isolation or with their families. But we have reports. I believe I saw a report from India where a huge coronavirus spread goes back to one mosque, for example, or that there are different groups like the Tablighi Jamaat or something like that,
Yeah.
that are completely defying the whole coronavirus lockdown and
Yeah, that's definitely what's going on now. And I think it's not just the Tabligh Jamaat. The Tabligh Jamaat is a huge problem because they tend to travel everywhere. They sleep in. I actually went for Tabligh Jamaat once, believe it or not. Tabligh Jamaat is a kind of Sufi leaning, for people that don't know, Sufi leaning sort of movement that believes that it's their duty for the men to leave the women and kids and families behind and go live in the mosque for up to 40 days, sometimes even 4 months at a time. You can also go for 3 days or 7 days. I just went for 3 days just to try it out. Obviously, I was single at the time. And you're sleeping on the freaking carpet of the mosque. You're like living in very close, like gathering together, and then you go door to door to people's houses to call them to come to the mosque, and then when they come to the mosque you kind of have this big talk and try to convince them to join you and go for Jamaat. And this whole thing has caused the outbreak to spread further and further. Not just that, there was, in South Korea, there was what's known as a super spreader. This one woman who came from China, she had some symptoms, but she ignored them. She went to a church gathering, and this one woman, I think they call it patient 31 or 33, case 33, she managed to infect more than 1,000 people in South Korea. Like it's insane just from going to one event. So it just shows you the danger of having these events. The Saudis, they decided to be very practical, and they've clamped down and they've shut down. It seems like they're going to shut down the Hajj, which is going to be shocking for most Muslims.
yeah.
What do you think?
It is well. Yeah, I don't know if there's much to say about it. Saudi Arabia has shut it down. It is ironic. People have Muslims themselves. I've seen so many Muslims themselves question that and think, hey, we shouldn't be doing that. Our Hajj is protected. There are a lot of Muslims who actually think that way and who express that online and to express it in the streets, who think, hey, nothing will happen to us. The Hajj is a holy place. It is protected. The Islamic pilgrimage is protected.
Yeah.
Allah will protect us. Nothing will happen from us trying to fulfill our one duty that we have in life. But Saudi Arabia just kind of shut it down, and
Yeah.
I believe they want to go ahead and cancel the whole thing for this for this year, as long
Yeah.
as the lockdown is going ahead, which would be a huge shock to Islamic Muslims right now.
I
But
think so. I think that's something that like so the Tabligh Jamaat has infected not just people in India, also in Malaysia, in Brunei, in Pakistan, and even in Gaza. So, some people are trying to say that this is some sort of corona jihad. That doesn't make sense. Nobody would
no,
intentionally get
no,
themselves sick. Like Muslim countries are now suffering by this too, not just India, like
yeah,
also like I said, those other countries. And then the Sikhs as well, Baldev Singh has also been a cause of a lot of the most infections in the Punjab state, right? And then, like I mentioned, in South Korea. So there's these religious events actually, and it's not just limited to religious events. Obviously, there's people that are still going to the beach in Miami Beach. So many people got sick because they decided to still go for spring break celebrations or whatever, and they came back and then they're spreading it to others. So, unfortunately, there's two types of people. I think there's people that are uh, you know going to but the thing is, there's a difference between the people that are going to beaches and the people that are going to mosques. The people that are going to beaches, they just don't care. They're just like, I'm not going to get sick. The people that are going to mosques, they have a belief that God is going to protect them. Like, isn't there a hadith that says that the plague will not enter Medina?
yeah, yeah,
Like, if this is considered a plague, it's a sort of plague. It's not exactly a plague. A plague is a specific type of illness that existed at the time of Muhammad, sort of bubonic plague, if that's what we're talking about. It's a bacterial infection. This is sort of like a plague. It's an epidemic. If you want to use that expression, then how come it's in Medina then? You know what I mean? Like, it's so easy to debunk this stuff. It's so silly that people still believe it. And some Muslims, I think, are having a crisis of faith, and some Muslims, I think, are just like, putting their head in the sands and doubling down. I think that's what we're finding among religious people. There's some of them like, I'm still going to go to church. Was it Ken Ham has his university that's reopened its doors, and they're like, we don't care. Like, there's some states as well that are more like, conventional. They don't want to shut down the border. They don't want to shut down anything, and it's going to be a crisis if they keep this up. So you see there's differences in people. Some are being practical, some are just being like crazy about the whole thing. And I think that's going to have a huge impact on the world. And it goes back to this whole thing we were saying about religious beliefs having and a negative effect, or a cost. There's a cost to having religious beliefs, that if you believe you're protected by God, or this holy water is going to protect you. In Iran, there was the one imam that drank the holy water, the Ayatollah, and he died. He said the holy water is going to protect him, but it didn't, right? And so I'm hoping that people will see now that this is not like going to protect you. That religious belief, black seed, and wudu. And the irony is, I think it's even almost dangerous to say that. By the way, have you seen that
it
meme?
is.
Have you seen the meme that people are saying? Some Muslims are saying, "Oh, you guys are Muslim now because
Oh yeah,
you're
God.
washing 5 times a day," and you're like, "Oh my God, do I hate that?"
They're saying you are almost halfway there to Sharia and stuff like that. So God, it is so dumb, so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. It's like avoiding buzz and shaking hands, washing the hands 5 times a day, covering the face. And the whole niqab thing, like now they're saying, oh, niqab, look, everyone hates niqab, now we're all wearing niqab. Well, no, it's different. We are covering our faces as a practical measure for a reason, not just because we think women shouldn't be seen.
I'm sorry.
Right?
A very Muslim way of thinking. I'm sorry, I have to say that, but that's an extremely Muslim way of thinking. As someone who grew up within Muslim society, that is a very typical Muslim way of thinking. To make such weird interpretations out of something like that, it sounds almost crazy to people outside, but that is really how it goes. There was one other thing that I saw recently, which was like, to all the atheists who say I don't believe in God because I don't see him. No, all the atheists who say I don't believe in God because I don't see him are now hiding at home from a
I saw
virus that
that.
they can't see. Shut the hell up. What are you talking about? You have no idea. You're making a very dumb analogy and actually reducing your God right now. Like,
It's so stupid because I mean the coronavirus is called coronavirus because of the shape of
yeah,
it. Looks, corona means crown. It's like a crown, like, you know what I mean?
you can see you can put it under a microscope and you can see it. You can see the virus. You cannot
Yeah.
put Allah under the microscope and see Allah. That would be pretty dumb. That would kind of be a funny idea to put Allah under this microphone and to look at this tiny Allah who waves at you and who asks you if you've done your daily prayers.
Yeah.
So that's not why that's not how it works. dear ladies and gentlemen. So really, and when it comes to how some Muslims claim that Islam protects you from this coronavirus, and how if you followed Islam you wouldn't get this coronavirus, I would really, I sometimes want to just make a whole video about how Islam doesn't protect you from the coronavirus, but then I think it's kind of lame to talk about coronavirus and Islam right now. I don't know why. But
Well, some people are saying like we shouldn't talk about these things
Yeah.
because people are dying and stuff like that.
But the thing is,
think we
it would maybe help to clear some misconceptions that are dangerous to Muslims. Actually,
Yes,
because people
exactly.
hold on to these beliefs and put themselves in danger because they believe that if they followed Muhammad, who didn't say anything helpful at all, on the contrary, he said very dumb and very scientifically illiterate stuff about diseases, to follow him, that would protect Muslims. It is simply wrong. Muhammad didn't believe that people could infect each other or that animals could infect each other. That's what he believed
Yeah.
very clearly.
There's a hadith that says that meat rots because of the sins of the Beni Israel, the Jews.
Because of Israel.
And
because
because women are disobedient to their husbands.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have to throw that part in there too.
So if your steak goes bad, it is the Jews' fault. Literally, it's the Jews' fault.
Yeah.
And seriously, when we say you can blame everything on the Jews, that's not an exaggeration. You see that Muhammad himself in a hadith said that meat decays, meat rots because of the children of Israel, meaning the Jews.
Yeah.
And that women betray their husbands, which is a very very Muslim view, because of Eve. So there you go. That's how helpful Islam is. That's how helpful Muhammad is.
Yeah,
Muhammad's
exactly. I
tradition is.
think, not religious beliefs and also pseudoscience and also conspiracy thinking, all of these things are very dangerous
Yeah, yeah.
because they are actually making the situation worse. I mean, man, it just upsets me so much. There was this one video someone forwarded to me that was a Muslim kind of live stream, and they had this Muslim, I don't know if he's Muslim or not, Muslim doctor, or I don't know if he's Muslim, but anyways, it was like he was saying all of these stupid things that really pissed me off, like drink hot water and lay down reclined and like you won't get sick. I'm like, you're gonna get sick. The virus is not gonna sit in your nose and wait for you to like, you put a humidifier. He's like, oh, put a humidifier in your nose. Like, that's not how germs work, and you're a doctor and you're saying these things? Like, come on. The virus doesn't sit in your nose and wait for you to kill it. It goes all over your body within seconds. Like, once you touch your nose or touch your mouth or whatever, your eyes, it's going to go in your body within seconds, instantly, basically, right? You can't sit there and, I'm going to take a hot shower now and clean out the coronavirus from my nose. Really? No, it has, like, doctors and, this pseudoscience and homeopathy, this famous Indian actor was saying homeopathy can kill the virus. Like really, please just stop. You're going to kill more people with this, because people then they're not going to take the actual advice, the good advice, and they're going to think they're protected because of these stupid things, and then they're going to die, and they're going to make other people sick.
Yeah. Awesome. So, best would be to follow advices. I would also recommend everyone to wear masks. Just do it. Don't listen to those who think it is unnecessary. Taking some precaution like this, like, is better than taking none. They're officially advising now. Like before they were saying don't wear masks because there's a shortage of masks. Yeah, but what was really the point of doing that? I mean, it was they were officially. I think they were officially saying that it is at the current time not necessary to wear masks, or that it wouldn't be entirely helpful. But we know, medically speaking, that it can actually prevent the spreading of the virus if you do wear masks. So even if it doesn't protect you from getting the virus when you have a mask, it will to some level prevent you from spreading it to other places while you're walking outside, for example, which is probably a good thing to follow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's hope that the whole situation will get better soon, and everything will be fine. Abdullah, I guess we can wrap up now and go and live our lives and go back to our dark rooms and curse Islam as we always spend our time 24/7. That's at least what I do. I have no life beside this. It's just, I'm sorry. And no, thank you so much for joining me, Abdullah. I appreciate it very much to have a conversation. I hope we can talk again in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity, and as you always say, stay away from Islam.
Whoa. Stay away from Islam. Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I should have a video out again very soon, and I will see you again. Thanks, Abdullah Sameer, one more time. Everyone, have a fantastic day and stay away from Islam. Da da dee da dum, da da dee da dum. I'm still not offline.